Hello everyone, and welcome to my Shaman's third episode in the Zero to Hero challenge. The goal of the challenge is to obtain a Mythic Plus rating of 2500 from an initial rating of 0 through the use of pugs only. I finished off last week with an item level of 443 and 538 Mythic Plus rating. The goal for this week is to complete the Emerald Dream weeklies, complete the Amirdrassil normal raid, and run as much Mythic Plus dungeons as possible. A couple of things that I want to mention before I get started. Next week's episode will be a little bit shorter, and then there will be no episodes for the following 2 weeks after, as I will be away visiting my family on the other side of the world. With that out of the way, let's get started. Upon logging in, I headed over to my vault and opened it up as I'd managed to unlock 5 slots last week and I was hoping for some good RNG this time around. I wasn't so lucky though, as most of the items that appeared in my vault were not great, and I resulted to simming them looking for the best result. In the end, I ended up picking up the 460 item level tier legs as they simmed the highest despite the fact that they are the worst tier piece out of the 5 for Elemental Shamans. Nevertheless, this brings me one set closer to obtaining my 4 set bonuses. After picking up my items from the vault, I headed straight into the Emerald Dream and picked up the usual 3 weekly quests and completed them as fast as I could. The rewards were not great at all. All the items were 441 item level, a shield, ring, and cape. The only upgrade that I could use was the ring, so at least not all 3 were disenchanted. I also killed the weekly world boss inside the Emerald Dream, but when he fell, I didn't get any loot. I've killed this boss a few times on multiple characters and it feels like the loot from the world bosses this expansion is quite rare. After completing the weeklies in the Emerald Dream, I was informed that we now get a catalyst charge every week as opposed to every other week, and as I'll be away for a few weeks soon, I decided I had better not let the charges go to waste and upgraded my wrists into ones from the raid as they had better secondary stats. I also catalyzed my chest, helm and gloves so that I could obtain the 4 set bonus with the tier legs I had obtained earlier from my vault. With the 4 set obtained, I could now switch over from the lightning build to lava style build, and although it did mean learning a new rotation, this one did feel simpler. I viewed the priority list on Wowhead and practiced a little bit while creating a group for the normal mode Amirdrassil raid. I was very eager to try out my new 4 set bonus along with the new talent build, and fortunately it didn't take long for the raid group to form. The first boss, Nalroot, fell quickly, and I got to see the difference in my DPS for the first time from having no set to 4 set. Compared with last week, my DPS was 30,000 higher than the previous week. Some of this is due to me feeling more comfortable on the Shaman, and a good portion of it is due to the gear and set bonuses. I didn't get any loot from this boss and we moved on to the second boss of the raid. Compared with the previous week's kill, which was very messy, this week's kill was much cleaner this time on the second boss. We only had 19 players as someone had left after Nalroot, but we killed the boss much faster this time around and without anyone dying. Once again, I didn't manage to obtain any loot, but at this stage I'm here more for fun than loot as I'm just overall enjoying the Shaman, although replacing my trinkets would be rather nice. With Igeria dead, we pressed on, clearing the trash to Volcaros while I filled in the open raid slots. As we often had some people leave after a boss went down. We got to Volcaros, but someone accidentally pulled the boss when we were not ready. Many people died here as a result, but some did manage to make it out of the room in time to reset the boss. With the mist pull out of the way, we made an actual attempt on the boss. This time everyone was ready and the boss fell once again without anyone dying. It seems like this is going to be a pretty quick and smooth run today for me, which will hopefully give me time to run some more Mythic Plus dungeons after. The next couple of bosses all died just like the previous ones. Larodar, Council of the Dreamers, Nimue and Smolderon, all without any death. I did manage to get my hands on a minor upgrade from Nimue, a 460 item level trinket, a fairly bad trinket for Elemental Shamans but still an upgrade over what I currently had, even with me forgetting to use the on-use effect rather often. We finally reached Tindral, a boss that I didn't get to kill last week as I had ran out of time. We had a couple of deaths on Tindral, but with this being normal, 2 players being down really doesn't make much of a difference, especially this late into the patch. I will however point out their mistakes so that you can learn from them. Right as we pulled Tindral, we lost an Evoker. He got 2 stacks of a debuff, which I'm not sure where it's from, but looked to be like some kind of explosion at the edge of the boss's platform. We left him dead and phased the boss. While moving towards the second platform, we lost a Paladin, as I couldn't see him die, but judging by the way his health dropped, I can only assume he ran into too many fire orbs while flying to the new platform. We also lost one more player at this point, a Hunter. I think he got lost on the way to the platform, ran out of time and died. For those of you that struggle with this, you always want to pass the tree while it's on your right side, as the boss moves around the platforms in a clockwise direction. Despite the 3 relatively early deaths, everyone else seemed to know what they were doing and followed the mechanics as needed, and the boss eventually fell, leaving us just one final boss away from completing the raid. Farak, just like all the other bosses this week, was a one-shot, but not without a couple of deaths. Our first death occurred during the Dream Rend ability. One of the demon hunters didn't move out of the fire on the ground fast enough. I believe he was AFK, and as a result died. Shortly after that, we also lost our monk healer to the ongoing AoE. I think he was too close to the Dream Rend ability and didn't move away far enough. We did get the monk back up during the transition to phase 2. In the next phase, we lost a hunter. I'm not sure how he died, as he died off screen and his health dropped instantly. It's possible he may have fallen off the edge of the room and fallen into the abyss. That was the only death in this phase until we reached the final phase of the encounter. The final phase on Farak was a little bit messy, as people were dropping the fire tornadoes all over the room instead of at the edges of the room, including on top of the stack point for the Raw. During the first Raw, a seed got hit by the tornado on the stack point, causing everyone to receive a large dot, killing 4 players instantly. But luckily the healers managed to prevent anyone else from dying at this point, and the boss was at its last 10%. On the very next Raw, we lost another 2 players, a Paladin DPS and a Priest healer. The healer did get put into his Spirit of Redemption form, so at least he could help out with healing the big dot on everyone before it expired. There was also a Warlock who very nearly died but just managed to survive. Not too long after the second Raw, the boss finally fell. Quite a few things dropped, but nothing too useful for me. I did try my luck at winning one of the Flame Warped Curios and managed to win one, which I then went and used to get my Shaman tier shoulders, which would allow me to replace the tier legs in the future if I get a better piece with more optimal secondary stats. In total, the normal clear took around 2 hours, a little bit longer than I had hoped, but most of it was just due to reforming the group after almost every boss and waiting for players to get to the new boss. With the raid out of the way, it was finally time to run as many Mythic Pluses as I could in the 1.5 hours I had remaining before I hit my weekly 4-hour time cap. The affixes for this week are Tyrannical, Afflicted, and Bolstering, so I made sure that I was spec'd into my Dispel and had a mouse over macro setup for it. I also picked up the Poison Cleansing Totem, as that way I could also solely affix whenever it was off cooldown. The first dungeon was an Atal'Dazar 11. This first key was pretty uneventful at this stage, and I had managed to reach an item level of 451, although I did forget to use the on-use effect of the Nimue trinket. We did have a small issue on the second boss of the dungeon, where we needed to kill all 3 totems at the same time. As we were all casters at different item levels, we were switching between totems quite a bit to try and keep them even, but unfortunately we killed 2 of the totems but couldn't quite get the last one, and this caused all the totems to reset. We then had the totem that was already low get finished off by one of the other warlocks, causing it to reset once again. A little frustrating, but on the 3rd try of killing the totems, we managed to get them down, all in time, and then kill the boss without any more problems. For the rest of the run, there was only 1 death. At around 10% remaining on the final boss, one of the warlocks got hit by a wandering spider and died, but since the boss was already low, it wasn't really a problem, and Yasma eventually fell. My damage was pretty bad this run, as I was still getting used to the new Shaman build for Mythic Plus. as I didn't really use the AoE rotation during the normal raid clear. Nevertheless, this run taught me a lot. We ended up 3-chesting the key, taking my rating up to 691. While creating a group for the next dungeon, I spent what crests and flight stones I could to increase my item level a little bit more, up to 453. The next key was an Everbloom 14. This was a very good run for me. The mobs were living a little bit longer at this level, letting me set up my damage and get into the rotation, unlike in the lower level keys. And as a result, I was often going over the 100k DPS limit, which is a vast improvement over the last week where I couldn't even break 70k DPS most of the time. Overall, this dungeon went by pretty fast, but we did have a few deaths throughout the run, with all of them occurring on one pull. The tank made a rather large pull that included the Abomination, and with this being a bolstering week and the flowers having very little health compared to everything else, the Abomination got buffed and its AoE proceeded to kill myself, the healer, and 2 DPS. The tank managed to stay alive and finish off the mobs while we ran back. The rest of the run was smooth. No deaths, and we ended up killing the final boss with enough time remaining to raise my key by 2 levels and my Mythic Plus rating up to 890, a rather large increase of almost 200 rating from one dungeon. My key upgraded into a Throne of the Tide 16, but time was running short. I sat in queue for a good 10 minutes with my key, but no one signed up, and having wasted so much time waiting to fill the group, I didn't have much time left, so I opted to drop my key down to a plus 11 key so I could form a group quickly with people looking to get Worm Crest to complete the dungeon before my time limit was up. This run ended up being a little slower than I had hoped. The 2 DPS I invited, despite being a higher item level than myself, were not really doing much more than me, and sometimes even less than me. Once again, we had a couple of deaths throughout the run. The first death occurred at the end of the corridor leading to the second boss's room. We pulled the first pack and line of sighted them. The mage immediately started blasting the adds, taking aggro from the tank and getting himself killed here. It is only a plus 11 key though, and we did kill the trash rather quickly still. The second death occurred on the boss Lady Nazjar, and this death was my own fault. I was a little bit too close to the AoE on the ground that spawns during the boss's intermission phase, got hit and died. I didn't use my defensive here, and maybe if I did I could have survived, but I was already at half health by the time I got hit. When it was safe to do so, I popped my reincarnation, and from this point forwards we finished off the boss. The next death occurred on the trash whilst clearing to the third boss. Unlike previous runs of this dungeon though, we didn't lose someone to the Tentacle Slam this time around. Instead, we lost our evoker to the Mind Flay ability. My interrupt was off cooldown here, so I should have stopped it, but realized a bit too late. This death could have been prevented if I was a little bit more aware. The fourth and final death of the dungeon was on the final pack before the third boss. The tank made a double trash pack pull, which isn't really an issue, but as is typical with this dungeon, we had to lose at least one player to the Tentacle Slam ability. This time, it was the evoker that fell. We finished off the pack and proceeded to kill the remaining 2 bosses without any further deaths, resulting in the key being upgraded by 2 levels and my rating increasing to a total of 997. So, to summarize this week, I completed my 4-set tier bonus, cleared the Amirdrassil raid on normal mode, raised my item level up to 453 and my Mythic Plus rating to 997. Next week I will primarily be focusing on getting my Mythic Plus content done. That's all for this episode. If you did enjoy the video, please do give it a like, comment and subscribe, as it really does help out the channel. See you next time and have a good one.